My daughter is 5 and she doesn't have a phone naturally, but last week she asked me to put mine away, and honestly, I didn't even think I was on it that much. Welcome back to Damn Parenting. I'm Eva, fellow parent, professional snack negotiator, and apparently not as invisible with my scrolling as I imagined. So my truth is, I reach for my phone in the boring bits, like when I've asked her 15 times to finish her now cold pasta after an hour, or during her 40-minute bath where she's practicing underwater gymnastics. When I'm tired, when I'm overstimulated, honestly, when I'm done. And it's not dramatic, it's just dopamine. And if I, a grown adult, reach for my phone during the slow, repetitive parts of parenting, what are we expecting from 9-year-olds? Right now in the Netherlands, the government is considering banning smartphones in schools all day. And across Europe, there's growing advice to wait up until at least 15 years of age before using social media. More and more parents are choosing to delay smartphones until group 8, around the age of 12. And GPs and youth care workers are reporting increases in anxiety, sleep disruption, low self-esteem, and concentration problems, all linked to smartphone use. Not because they're anti-tech, but because something about early access doesn't feel right. And this isn't anti-technology, it's pro-childhood. And this conversation didn't start in Parliament, it started with us parents. The grassroots movement is called Smartphone-vrij opgroeien, which simply means growing up smartphone-free. And it began in the UK and was now brought to the Netherlands because it matters to all of us. Because if our children are growing up here in the Netherlands, going to Dutch schools, forming friendships here, navigating the culture, then this affects them, whether we speak Dutch or not. And that's why I'm replaying this episode. When I first released it last year, some of you probably thought, my toddler isn't even in school yet, it doesn't really apply to me, but it does. Parents are signing up to this movement with babies, with preschoolers, because the school culture our children walk into at 10 is shaped by the choices we make long before that. There's even a WhatsApp group specifically for English-speaking parents because this movement understands that we all play a part in the shaping of the environment our children grow up in. Governments oversee the country, we raise the children. And if you care about the future your child is stepping into, and I know you do if you're on this podcast, this conversation matters now. So yes, please silence your phone and let's talk. Hi there and welcome back to Damn Parenting. I'm your host Eva, fellow parent, recovering doom scroller, self-appointed expert at hiding my own phone from my child. And if you're here, chances are you're an international parent living in the Netherlands, trying to balance the magic of Dutch childhood freedom with the very real reality of little eyes glued to little screens. So let's say it out loud. Why the hell do we hand small supercomputers to children and then we act shocked when they can't focus for 30 seconds without a dopamine hit? Today we're exploring the complex relationship between kids' schools and smartphones. Researchers like Angela Duckworth and Jean Tvinga have highlighted phones kill focus, phones kill memory, phones kill sleep. Phones kill just about everything, except a child's ability to do a stupid TikTok dance in the Albert Heijn aisle. Many of us choose Dutch or international schools because we trust in the famously carefree, happy Dutch childhood. More play, less pressure. But the world has changed fast, and sometimes even the best schools can't keep up with the technology in our children's pockets. So you're sitting there in your gezellig Dutch home and wonder, should I speak up? Will the teacher roll their eyes at me? Will my kid be the only one without a phone? Am I overthinking this? And if that sounds like you, you're not alone. Are we protecting our kids from phones or just hoping they'll magically self-regulate in a world designed to hijack their brains? Let's talk about what's happening in countries around the world. Many are restricting or banning smartphone use in schools to curb the distractions and promote better learning. Nations like France, China, Australia, Canada have implemented bans or strict guidelines, and others like Italy and Denmark are moving towards similar policies. Globally, there's growing momentum for phone-free classrooms, especially for younger students. And right here, parents are starting to ask, why not us too? Which brings me to today's guest. I'll be joined by Danielle, a member of the Opgroei Smartphone-vrij, a grassroots movement born when they saw in the UK and other countries were acting, but here, parents can't wait for the government to take care of everything. Sometimes it's up to us as parents to stand up for our kids' real child. Knees scraped, memories made, screens left behind. And I'll be honest, this episode might make some of us squirm. It might even sound guilt-driven, but hey, I'm the first to admit I feel guilty myself. How many times a day do I pick up my phone just to check Bound Radar and end up lost in a notification while my child watches on. It's way too many. I'm not perfect, and I want better for her, and I know you do too. So buckle up, silence your phone. Seriously, go silence your phone. And join us for a real talk about smartphone schools and how we as parents can help our kids stay kids. So let's rewind a little bit. Smartphones didn't just land in our hands all that long ago. The first iPhone came out in 2007. Back then, it felt like a magic trick. Maps in your pocket, camera in your fingertips, constant connection with everyone you love. What could go wrong? At first, no one really worried about what these little screens were going to do to our brains. If anything, we were amazed at how fast kids could swipe before they could talk. And they look like geniuses. Our little ones are going to be digital superheroes. But then, within 10 years, researchers and parents started to notice something was off. Teachers in the UK began sounding the alarms. Students aren't just distracted, they're chronically distracted. Test scores were dipping. Kids struggled to concentrate, and well, teachers were losing teaching hours by phone policing rather than anything else. Then, researchers like Jean Tvinge started putting all the pieces together. In her groundbreaking work, iGen, she showed that the rise of anxiety, depression, and sleeplessness among teens and preteens directly mirrored the explosion of smartphone and social media use. Around the same time, Angela Duckworth turned her attention to digital distraction. Her team found that just having a phone visible, not even using it, is enough to lower test scores and shrink your brain's ability to do deep, focused work. And the kicker? Even kids with high self-control cannot win against an app designed to ping, poke, and drag them back in. Duckworth argues it's not even fair to expect our kids to resist billion-dollar tech companies on sheer willpower alone. They need structural rules to protect them. Meanwhile, countries like the UK took these findings seriously. Schools began banning phones altogether during the school day. And guess what? Behavior improved. Focus improved. Kids went back to, well, just being kids for those few hours. So the signs were there. We knew it's not about screen time. It's about rewiring developing brains in ways no generation before has faced. And yet, here we are in the Netherlands, where some schools have guidelines, some don't. And many parents feel alone asking, should my 9-year-old really need a smartphone to have friends? Today, you're not alone, because a brave group of parents have said enough. If governments can be slow, parents can be fast. In the Netherlands, it's pretty common for kids to get their first smartphone between the ages of 10 and 12. On average, they spend anywhere from 1 to 3 hours a day on their device. It's raising concerns. From social media might be affecting their mental health, to the impact on school performance and their general well-being. It sparked a growing conversation about whether we need clearer age guidelines and better strategies to manage screen time. So now, let me bring in someone who's part of making this happen right here in the Netherlands, Danielle from Opgroei Smartphonevrij. She saw what was happening in the UK and realized if they can do it, so can we. So welcome, Daniela.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get straight into it, because understanding how Opgroei Smartphonevrij came to be is key to understanding everything that's unfolding right now. So what sparked its creation and what were the driving forces behind getting it off the ground?
So we were a bunch of parents at the kitchen table wondering what we should do about the question that we got from our own children who came to us and said, can I have a smartphone because everyone at school is having one, or the first friend in the neighborhood was having one, and parents being caught out by that because the kids were only 8 or 9. Basically, I think a lot of us were expecting that question at some stage, but not quite yet, and got a little bit of a reaction to it in the sense that we maybe felt instinctively that it was too young, but we didn't really have any sort of reason to back that up, and we didn't really know what other parents were doing. So individual parents started to ask around and realized that quite a lot of parents had the same concern or the same worry, but it seemed fairly impossible not to give in because everyone else seemed to have already given it or was also in the process of doing that. And then we saw that there was a parent movement in the UK, which was a smartphone-free childhood. And they had a very similar approach and had started to come together with a group of parents, just a small WhatsApp group, initially 2 people, and then it went viral and it was 1,000 people. And now it's like 350,000 people on all sorts of channels in the UK getting involved. And we thought the issues are so similar. This is a global thing as parents. You know, we're all in this impossible position of either we give in and give them a smartphone with all the kind of risk and harm that potentially could come from that, or we don't, and then we isolate them from friends at a crucial time of their development when that all starts to become super important. So that's sort of catch-22, where there's absolutely nothing you can do right, and where there's no government policy to sort of support you in any way with this, led us to start initially a website, and we just asked the UK if we could use some of their materials, translated the basic web page and put it up there last summer, and and just spread the word to a few friends, and we're absolutely amazed to see that even here within a few days there was 100 schools where parents started to have these conversations and signed up with app groups and just talking among each other. And we seem to have that same sort of response that happened in all over the world. It's now in 30 countries. Parents have done similar things, and everywhere it's an issue that that's very present in parents' minds. And as soon as you offer something, the need really becomes obvious.
So, what kind of activities or initiatives are you actually currently running to support your mission?
Yeah, so it started very simple. By the main question parents had was, how do I talk to other parents about this? So we just started sharing little messages that other parents had sent in their school WhatsApp groups that they might be in with parents, in the class of their child, just to say something like, I've watched this TV program lately, or have you seen this video, or I listened to this podcast about kids and smartphones. It got me thinking, is anyone interested in having a cup of coffee about this? Or our daughter came home last night and asked the $1 million question, when do I get a smartphone? I'm not sure. We're worrying about it, or we're having some concerns. We would love to speak to you about it. Very sort of easygoing messages that parents had actually sent, and that seemed to not trigger a sort of blaming response, because a lot of parents feel very insecure. Like no one wants to sort of say, I'm doing it right, you're doing it wrong. Like parenting is hard enough as it is. So it was all about, how do we make this a conversation in a language that is not judgmental and supportive and kind of in solidarity, regardless of the decisions you may have already made or where you're at on this ladder. Because of course, if you have a 14-year-old, it's very different than when you have a 5-year-old. So it was really about that. And parents just wanted to know, how do you talk to other parents? So we literally started sharing example messages and said, here's a way. We created a community. You can add your school into that community on WhatsApp, and then you can send a link out to your class and say, if anyone wants to talk about this, here's a separate place to do that. We don't want to spam anyone here. So just kind of one low threshold message. And then it worked. People from every class, some people were like, I also struggle with this. And they came over to the other app group and started chatting. So we still have that. It's one of the core of the mission, is that we make it very easy for parents to come together on this, and also to be able to say, let's meet up tomorrow after school, or dropping the kids off, let's have a coffee, or let's hang out in the playground for 10 minutes and just have a chat, because it's something you also really want to take offline and just actually have a face-to-face conversation with parents about. And WhatsApp then is just one way to make that happen. What we've since introduced is also the Parent Pact, which we've saw in the UK as a very great way of immediately making visible that you're not the only one. Because there was two reasons, I'll come to the other one, but there seems to be two big reasons why parents give the first smartphone. And one is because everyone else is doing so. So the peer pressure, not wanting your kid to be the odd one out. And when we saw that parents were able to witness, as we saw that in the UK, on a school level and even on a class level, the group level, how many other parents are also delaying the smartphone, because that's all the question is like, can we get together and delay for a few years? We saw that was really helping others to be able to feel confident to join. So we started this Parent Pact, and it really is a way to sort of show support for the idea of delaying. Of course, it's not a legally binding thing. We're not going to go check like where, you're even anonymous. You just sign up and say, my kid is in year 5 on this and this primary school. And we are also intending to delay the smartphone till at least 14. And then you see that, wow, there's 10 other parents in my school, and I would quite like to meet them, because how do they do this? And what kind of things do they come across, and how does it work in practice? And then people can sign up to the WhatsApp group to sort of say, well, I've signed the pact. Is there anyone else that wants to meet about this? So there's kind of two roads in now. You can join the groups and just see, have the chat or ask some questions, or you can sign the Parent Pact and that way get involved if you want, or just be kind of supported by the idea that you're not alone. And that seems to be really helpful. And then actually one third, because I said there's two reasons. The other one, the reason that parents give it, outside of that sort of feeling that you're the only one, or that your kid is the only one, The other reason, that is the first reason people give it, is the connectivity. So this is the idea that my kid is going to cycle alone to school and they're getting a bit older. They might go to football class by themselves and I want to be able to reach them. And I want them to be able to reach me when they have a flat tire or where they want to contact their friends for a play date or something like that. And that we realized, and again, we saw inspiration from the parent movements around the world, that actually, why are we giving a supercomputer in their pocket with access to the internet when really we could just be giving a good old brick phone? You know, the Nokia we all remember from our own youth, they still exist. They cost about 30 quid. You can buy them in any phone store with a prepaid card, or, you know, or a cheap call and text only subscription. So there's options there that actually do the job for those first few years. And all we've kind of said was, can we keep the connectivity and not immediately also introduce everything else that comes with the internet in your pocket on a supercomputer that really is there to draw your attention the whole time. And I think for a lot of parents, it was kind of a groundbreaking idea that they still exist. And actually, why do we say phone when really what we're talking about is not really a phone? And a lot of parents started to share ideas. Oh, we bought this device, and kind of started leaving reviews about how good or bad they were. Some parents said we all introduced a landline together again so that friends can call each other. So people started really to sort of co-create solutions for this connectivity thing, and said, is there other ways that we can obviously not cut them off from friends, but actually do protect them against the other things that come with smartphone use? So we evolved that way, and it's a very practical, hands-on thing of like, if we do this together, we can start to change the social norm ourselves. And of course, a lot more needs to happen in the country and internationally and European wide to actually really protect kids. But there's one simple thing that we can do that doesn't feel simple, but once you do it, it's actually easier than you thought. And that's just getting together and delaying a few more years.
I have to say, when I spoke to you previously, we walked through the website for me to find my child's school. And I was really struck by how many people in the entire school and then the breakdown of it. I think that was really fascinating. And it's also a great way to open up a conversation with other parents. So I am looking forward to being able to sit down and ask the question and see what parents actually know about this. Also, you just mentioned there about the landlines. That was something I did want to bring up. I've noticed a lot of parents on social media are saying this is a great way for them to connect with their family, that they can always pick up the phone and ring Oma or Opa or whoever it is that they want to ring as well. So I think that's a really nice nostalgic thing to have in the house. I don't think it's going to be an old rotary phone probably, but I mean, it's a wonderful option to bring back in because you're still giving them that autonomy that they can always pick up the phone to still ring if they want.
Yeah, and it's also just something weird. Like I realized when I was going to Albert Heijn and left my kids at home for the first time for a few minutes, and I thought, oh shit, they can't actually even call the fire brigade if the house is on fire. You know, I just started thinking like we actually don't have a way for them to connect with anyone. You know, this is weird, really. And I don't want them to, you know, to constantly necessarily be on the whole internet. But our house isn't connected to anything unless everyone has their own personal device on them. And the same thing for us. You know, I don't want to be constantly on my smartphone, and I really just want to be able to ring. So we've now, for the meantime, put an old Nokia in the house. It's a mobile, but it's kind of the house mobile, so to say. And that one just sits there always on the shelf. Even my parents have the number because I realized sometimes I just want to put my phone off and I don't want to have all the notifications. So I think a lot of parents are also struggling with their own phone use and thinking, actually, how can I reduce the dependency on that? So there's all sorts of funny things start happening when you start looking at replacing some of these, you know, some of these dependencies that we've created. And it's not easy, and not everything is obviously replaceable, but there are ways. And even for example, WhatsApp, there are parents that have said, look, we have one smartphone that lives in the house that the whole family can have their WhatsApp groups on, you know, from sports clubs and school and whatever. But it stays in the kitchen, and it's a way to be connected, but you can't have it in your pocket. It's not, you know, it's not your personal computer 24/7, but it is your way to stay connected to, you know, the clubs or the various app groups that you may be in. So it's really hopeful, I think, to see parents starting to actually, co-create solutions to this, and particularly on the connectivity one, there's quite a lot you can do. And same with practical things like, oh, they need apps for when they go into high school. A lot of these things can actually also be accessed on a desktop computer, right? And on a laptop. And that's not to say that that the gateway to social media and other apps cannot also be through the desktop, but the 24/7 access really is what creates, for a large part, this sort of gateway to heavy use and overuse and unrestricted and unsupported use. And that really, there's other options for that. But parents quite often in the beginning are a bit surprised because they just hadn't really thought that there was other options. We just say phone, and actually we've just gone to the default of that being a full fat smartphone.
So, how can individuals, parents, or schools get involved with or support your work?
So basically, I think we support each other. It's not so much about supporting our work. We're still just parents at a kitchen table trying to make this a thing that every parent can access. So for international parents, we've got a few things. So we've got a WhatsApp community for English speakers. So there's people around the country who just prefer to ask questions sometimes in English, and we translate some of the materials in there. If you just want a group of like-minded parents or supportive parents to talk to in English, everyone's very welcome to join that. And on the website, you can see a little WhatsApp symbol and you can click the English language group, but we can also share the link. And what we are doing is trying to translate some of the actual materials into English, which ironically, they often came from English. So if you want already to read up more, I would really say check the Smartphone Free Childhood UK website as well, because that is ahead of where we are. That's got amazing resources. And just to get involved in the issue, I think it's a very good place. And we're trying to also work on getting all the Dutch materials in bilingual so that everyone can access those. But yeah, there is already quite a supportive community of English speakers. There's also some international schools that have joined up who are creating materials. So if you want to tap into that, come on board and sign the pact if you're keen to do that, or join your local school group, even if you just drop a message in there to say, hi, I'm also here. And if anyone wants to talk about this in English, we have some schools where there's 5 other parents then that say, let's have a coffee and just remove the language barrier that way. There's various ways. Yeah, the main thing is just connect in whichever way feels comfortable for you and open up the conversation. Yeah, I think it becomes easier from there.
Just before we hit record, you were telling me something about the national policies and something in local policies. Shall we get into that?
Yeah, well, the hopeful thing is when we started a year ago, it wasn't a topic. It wasn't a topic in government, it wasn't a topic in the media, and it wasn't really a topic on school squares either. And what we've seen now since we've started making noise and going on the soapbox about this is that there's been a ton of media coverage in Dutch media and public broadcasts, the newspapers, the websites, all sorts. So there's been an absolute national conversation sparked on the back of parents joining. We've also had 3,000 doctors recently come out, more than 3,000 supporting us, child doctors, pediatricians, eye doctors, all in favor of upping the age for social media to 16 and delay the smartphone till at least 14. Right? And they base this on physical damage, risk of mental health problems, and the fact that the environment just isn't a safe and secure place for kids. So they see every day in their practice the consequences of that, and they very much want something to be done. So we've had that support of all these doctors and scientists in the country, and that has led really to also more weight in the national debate about this. And policymakers have started to take notice. We've had the school policy come in last year, which bans smartphones just from class. But what in practice happens is that a lot of kids can have them between lessons. So they give them back at every beginning and every end of every lesson. And in break times and on the school square, they're still very much present, which of course affects the social interaction, but also affects the ability to concentrate and to remember some of the material because there isn't that resting period in the brain. So there's a lot of doctors that have spoken out about that as well. And just the damage on learning and the damage on social development. So what's happened with the school guidelines is that there's now a new plan introduced to try and make that stricter so that school policy actually means bell to bell smartphone free. We just don't have it at school. And it's quite interesting if you're already with kids at school or if you're going to start looking for secondary schools that you ask your school, what's your policy? Because they need to have policy now, but it doesn't really specify how strict it needs to be. And there's calls now for that to become the norm, that every school has to be smartphone free. But we're not there yet. And we see in high schools, for example, that it's about 35% of schools now do it voluntary. They already sort of say, we interpret the guidelines stricter than it is. And we ban it from schools and we see massive benefits. And hardly any school is reversing that again, because once they introduce it, they see it's a much better learning environment. So that's a policy that's in the change. And really, you can ask your school about that because we show demand if we ask that. In the beginning, they were afraid parents wouldn't want it, but now the opposite seems to be true. Parents do want this, and it becomes a thing. It becomes a part of your choice for school if you know that they have decent smartphone policies. So there's a big change on that side. And the other policy change is that there is now a national guideline. It's not law. So it's a health guideline by the Ministry of Health that they've just released last week to say that they advise no social media under 15. That's also in line with what other European countries are doing. And there's a lot of conversation internationally about, how to make sure that kids are protected from apps that aren't suitable and safe for them to use. So that's part of a much bigger European conversation, definitely. But the Dutch government has now come out and advised against social media use under 15. Now they make an exception for chat apps, but there's already some gray area about that because, as we know, WhatsApp is becoming more and more like a social media platform too. It's already got an AI function. It's already got channels. It's got community options. It's also started introducing ads in the US last few weeks. So what you're going to get is sort of a blurry scale of which apps are social media and which are not. And policymakers are always going to be catching up with that, right? So we're saying, okay, great, there's policies, but if the gateway is still in the child's pocket and you don't feel that they're ready for that yet, delaying the entire smartphone is by far the easiest way to ensure that you get a few more years of undisturbed childhood without having to constantly play catch up. There is hope in the sense that some cities are taking the lead. Amsterdam, in particular, is very ambitious. They have come out last week with a guideline for the city, and they say in that all primary school kids should have a chance to grow up smartphone free. So that's a massive first step. And they actually say in the policy document that their goal is to change the norm on this. So that's very much in line with what we've been saying all along. Like the average age of kids getting their own first devices got younger and younger in the last decade or so. It's now around 8 or 9. The average screen time used for young teens in Holland is 6.5 hours a day. What are they not doing in those 6.5 hours in terms of developmental tasks? Even if everything they did on that was fun, like what are we losing here? And not even talking about the physical damage on eyes and the mental damage on or that comes with using these platforms. So Amsterdam is really trying to be ambitious there, and it means that if you still come across schools that say, well, we need WhatsApp groups for the kids because they need to learn how to use this, you can now say, well, the city council has actually brought out new guidance where they actively advise against that. So I think it will give Amsterdam parents a real, supportive document and a real kind of a way to go and break open that conversation and say, have you seen this new guideline? It's going to help also with talking to school leaders and anyone else in your child's environment that may not be on board with this change just yet. So we notice that parents quite instinctively very often feel that they want to do this, but it's practical things that get in the way. And hopefully, having the city on board like that is going to help take away some of these practical consequences that we're still experiencing in this transition, because it does really feel like there's a beginning of a shift that means we're going to look back on this, I think, in a decade and think, how did we ever just let it happen as a society that we gave child of any age an unrestricted, full-blown smartphone in their pocket, and trusting that the tech companies would deal with that in a way that puts their health and development first. I mean, that was always an illusion, and I think it's a wake-up moment for society, and it's hopeful to see that Amsterdam is acknowledging that fully. And one of the first pages in the document is, how can we minimize the harm of this? And of course, there's always been chats about, there's loads of stuff that they learn online, and how can we make sure that they access the things they want to access? But when it comes to their own device in your own pocket being the gateway, I think we're seeing a bit of a reckoning with that and thinking, can we just introduce internet usage gradually in a way that doesn't really expose them to the whole world that's out there on a smartphone from day one?
Well, Danielle, thank you so much for joining us and for all the work you've actually been doing. Again, it's without the roundtable of parents like yourselves who are actually creating this movement, the grassroots movement that it is. So thank you so much for joining us, for sharing all this information. All the information she has mentioned will be put into the show notes. So please be sure to click on there and do browse. Even if you're not thinking it's not for me yet, you will be surprised that when you do click into your province, into your city, into your school, and into all the groups, you will actually see there's some people whose children haven't even started yet, have already signed up. So they will be starting in 2026 or 2027. So do check that out. Danielle, thank you so much for joining us here in Damn Parenting, and we're wishing you best. And I've definitely already signed up our daughter for that.
Be very welcome. It's amazing to see now. We're at about 60% of all primary schools just in 7 or 8 weeks. So you're definitely not alone. We're all in this together.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's it for today's episode on the Opgroei Smartphone Vrij movement, a growing grassroots call to give our children the best chance to grow up connected to life, not just screens. If this conversation struck a chord with you, you're not alone. Parents, caregivers, teachers, and communities everywhere are waking up to the same questions, and the same hope. Let's keep the momentum going. Share this episode with a friend, your partner, your parent group, your school WhatsApp chat, anyone who cares about how our kids grow up. Follow or subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss future episodes diving deeper into real human-centered parenting in the digital age. Rate and review if you can. It helps others find us. And most of all, join in the conversation. When we share the load, it feels lighter. When we come together, we feel stronger. And when we act together, real change becomes possible. Thanks for listening. And remember, you're not alone. We're raising the future together.